In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found No Proscenium.
You have indeed found No Proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson. This week on the show, writer-director Ryan Griffen and executive producer Nathan Anderson are here to talk to us about Lustration, the narrative VR series that adapts Griffen's comic book story of the same name into a multi-dimensional VR series, which you can find on the Meta Quest. Then David Markland drops by to tell us about this year's Midsummer Scream, the Halloween convention coming up in Long Beach, California at the end of July. And finally, we settle in for a great conversation with Susanna Pollack, president of Games for Change, producers of On the Morning You Wake to the End of the World, and of the upcoming Games for Change Festival in New York City and online in mid-July that brings game makers and XR creators together with a focus on creating social impact through their work. So, big episode. I was going to make a diminutive. No, this is a big one. But before we get started, a couple of announcements. I nearly said quick, but one of these won't go quick. First up, tickets are now on sale for The Dig, the Denver Immersive Gathering happening this November 4th through 6th in the Mile High City. This is an event unlike any other we've been a part of, and we here at the Immersive Experience Institute are proud to be closely partnered with the folks at Immersive Denver to bring this truly first of its kind. People like to throw that around and they're wrong, but we're right. First of its kind community event together. Over the course of the 3 days, we'll kick off with a keynote from executive producer and creative director Anne Morrow Johnson, creative director Sarah Thatcher, and director of immersive experience Michael Tara Garver of Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. And then the gathering will set off to explore Meowwolf's Convergent Station together before settling into party mode inside the station. That Saturday, immersive creators from around Denver will be showcasing their work for our guests, and we'll also be sending folks to Rabbit Hole Recreation Services, the escape room company that has nothing but rave reviews, with special runs hosted by our friends from Room Escape Artist. That's thanks to the folks at the Morty app. If XR is your thing, the XR programming of the Denver Film Festival, curated by Landon Zackheim, who listeners know from the Overlook Festival, will be open for our attendees, and those who pick up VIP badges will be treated to David Byrne's Theater of the Mind, presented by the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. And the night culminates in the Big Dig party and exploration of Denver's own sports castle, hosted by the folks at Non Plus Ultra. All that, plus behind-the-scenes tours, networking opportunities, and a city's worth of adventures. Oh yeah, there's more programming to talk about on the horizon. All of this starts at the ridiculously low price of $150 for a standard pass and $250 for the VIP, which has Theater of the Mind and priority access for scheduling. These prices won't last forever. You can see it on the site. So lock your ticket in now if you want to get the best deal. How did Immersive Denver get the price so low? That's thanks to our partners, including generous support from Denver Arts and Venues. Look, I've been dreaming of an event like this since before we started doing summits, and I'm elated that in this year of all years, we're able to bring this to everyone at a price that matches what our subsidized passes have cost in the past. Check the show notes for the link, and I really hope to see you in Denver this November. But that's not the only community event that's happening. This Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific, we're having another virtual edition of NoPro's Office Hours that will take place in Nowhere, the browser-based video chat platform that we played around with during the pandemic and which everyone really enjoys hanging out in. Come tell us what you are working on facebook.com/need tips with, and you can connect with other creators and fans. Answer this month's icebreaker when you arrive. Maybe not exactly when you arrive, but this is what we're going to pop up. I'm reading from the notes. It's not all grammatical. What's the weirdest show or virtual world you've ever been to? Office hours, 4 p.m. Monday Pacific time in Nowhere. Check the show notes. There is invites, links for both Facebook and LinkedIn, whichever one you like to make your plans in. All right. The sustaining backers of No Proscenium are Ari Hurston, Chris Woolman, Eric Shamlin, Deborah Robinson, Elaine, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Gentes, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hands-On, Mark Balthazar, Sidney Guillory, and Jan Budman. Couldn't do this without you. We are almost 6 minutes in, and we haven't gotten to anything yet, and the episode is huge. So let's get to our first interview with the team behind Lustration. One of the things I've really enjoyed this year is the 4-part series Lustration, which can be found on the MetaQuest platform. This is an adaptation of a graphic novel of the same name about it's kind of an afterlife noir and follows characters both in the real world and in this sort of purgatorial space as a large conspiracy about the afterlife unfolds. It's an absolutely fascinating world, and it's told in an absolutely fascinating way along parallel tracks inside of a VR app. Everyone who listens to the show knows that I am a huge fan of comic books, and I'm very, very eager to talk with folks who are playing in both the comics and the XR space. And we've got the creative team and the producer of Lustration here with us today. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And if you could introduce yourselves so everyone knows who's who.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us. I'm Ryan Griffen. I'm the writer-director of Lustration.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. My name is Nathan Anderson. I'm one of the executive producers on the project and also the CEO at New Canvas.
Before we get into the hows of Lustration, we should start with the what. So, Ryan, what's the story that you're building here?
I think you summed up pretty well as the idea of this noir story set within the afterlife. But for me, it also has another level, or the reason why I'm wanting to tell this story is the lengths that anyone would go to for the ones they love. And so the story follows several different characters across their journeys and the things that they will do for love.
There's kind of the way you do this in the first 4 episodes and also in the first part of the comic. It's very much a laying out of the set pieces. Like, here's the characters, and you get a real strong sense of who they are, but it also feels like you're plugging them into this big sociological machine that's kind of, and watching the characters get put through their paces. Is that one of the ways you think of this about, the people inside processes?
Yeah, absolutely. There's many different layers to the storytelling. There's one, obviously, the world for me was a really big part of this journey for me, and a lot of the work that I do. I'd like to create different worlds. I grew up on comic books, animated TV series. They were just something for me to just cling to. That's something different, but find a way to have that connection to the world at the same time. And Lustration for me is very much about that and making sure that stays true. Then on top of that, everything has to be character driven. So it is really how we see ourselves or how we project our own emotions onto a character, as not only as a writer but also as the audience, and follow that through. And for me, it's just a fun ride to put these type of characters and put them through these situations in unique worlds and locations.
I'm going to start drifting us towards the what and the process part of all this. But I am curious, Lustration has been a comic, and now it's this 360 animated piece. that, just to be clear for everyone, like you are inside. It's not something you're just watching, but the piece surrounds you. It is fully spatialized. But what medium did you first envision this story in? Did it start definitely as a comic, or was it a short story you're writing, or you're thinking of it as a film? I'm always curious as to how things wind up traipsing along different mediums.
Yeah, sure. So a few years ago, I created a TV series called Clever Men, and that did really well and sort of sold around the world. And I had a lot of people going, "Well, look, you need to sort of have your next project ready." And at that point, I had written a pilot for a 1 hour drama series of Lustration, and sort of took it to market. And everyone was reading the script and said, "Look, this is really exciting, and this is different." But their concerns were it's high concept, it's a large budget, and we're kind of at the stage where the market is. If it is high budget, you need to kind of show a previous audience, or have a long running IP. And I was writing comic books for the TV series Clever Man, and I approached the same publisher and one of the partners on this, Gestalt Publishing, to see if they were interested in making it into a comic, that they were keen to do so. That was the first iteration of bringing this to life. And then when Nathan approached me to do something in the VR space, this was something that I thought, could be the right fit for it, because it gave the audience an opportunity to step inside a comic book and be in the world and feel the textures that we're so used to just turning the pages for, but to actually immerse ourselves within it was something really exciting for me.
Nathan, how did you step into this story? Did you know Ryan's work before? Did you know?
Yeah, so it was quite an interesting journey. We so back in 2018, I've always been interested in, I guess, how we can evolve the storytelling medium in immersive spaces, and one of the things I identified kind of early on is that we need to kind of develop the sophistication and the craft of our story in this space. And I think anyone that's been in VR for a while will know that there's a lot of great tech demos and a lot of good developers that are kind of that are thinking creatively, but we're sort of moving to a stage now where we need sort of people that are focused purely on story and narrative to kind of start to work in the space. So that's a kind of a long way of saying that we came up with a program that we an artist residency, where essentially we sort of said, look, let's bring in people that may not be currently working in VR or immersive media, but that have great ideas and have talent, and let's work with them on a kind of a residency program that didn't have a set outcome. So we spent probably, I think might have almost been 9 months over the process, which was an immersion session where Ryan and the team, we would just have a look at a lot of different VR and give Ryan headsets and go away, look at let's just look at what's out there, let's see what's interesting, and so that process went through, and during that Ryan came back and said, look, there's a couple of ideas I've got, and Lustration jumped out as being something that was both had a lot of potential, but also was already underway. There was a comic there. We could sort of see the world, and it really lent itself to what we thought was worth exploring in VR. So it was a bit of it was certainly not a clear process from the outset. When Ryan and I sat down and said, let's do Lustration, it was more like, let's find out what we can work on together. And this project kind of bubbled up. And just sort of going back to, what you mentioned about the story, what I love about this and really attracted me was this sense of a fantasy context, the afterlife, which you can meld all these cultures together and without having it to be placed somewhere. It's not a story set in Australia or a story set in any part of the world. It's actually a story set in humanity, if you like, and that's what's really interesting about this. I think there's a lot of opportunity to explore that further.
Well, one of the things I think is interesting about the storytelling here is that things are unfolding on parallel tracks, and the way that is accomplished in the VR is to have there be 3 or 4 different camera positions you could be looking at in any given episode, and some of those take you to an entirely different place, or some of them flip you from the real world to the afterlife, so you can see things happening in one space and affecting the other. And I was really fascinated by that being there at all. It's not something that you would have in a film necessarily. It's or TV. It's more game-like in some ways, but it does also remind me of the way stories can be told in comics. And lo and behold, there, right from the very first issue of the comic, the same kind of beats were happening, where actions were taking place, on one side of the page and being reflected on the other. It's sort of storytelling in parallel. What drove the choice to have that be a structure? Is this something thematic that you're scratching at, or you're interested in playing form?
Yeah, look, I think there's it allows us to play with a few different elements and genres within the storytelling. So, on a broad blanket, this is a detective noir story, but in a way that both the comic and the VR series has done. We've also looked at, first in the pages in the comic, but also in the way that the story is told in the VR in individual episodes, is that they kind of have a subgenre to it. So, as an example, is that episode 2, we lean on tropes of, paranormal storytelling or horrors, or, and we lean on those tropes and build the story, with that in mind. Later episodes kind of lean towards a thriller, and episode 1's kind of like your standard drama. So it just allowed, myself as a writer to sort of, explore genres within characters, I guess, is probably a way to look at it, instead of within episodes. And for me, that's it just makes the process a lot more fun. You're always, trying something different. It also makes it quite unique for the audience, and whether they pick it up or if it's a subconscious thing. Because I believe, audiences are so clued on with storytelling these days. You really need to bring something, refreshing and structurally different for it to be more engaging than what we're used to. So
Yeah.
for me, it's really about playing with the structure and the expectations of the audiences.
I've been giving a lot of thought lately just to like how much material out there is just content and isn't actually, story in the sense of anything that you would treasure, right? Like there's something to when we all fell in love with story, or anyone who does fall in love with story, there's something special, there's something magical about it on some level. It speaks to you deeply, and yet because we have an entertainment industry that just needs content, that you just see there's this wave after wave of just stuff, and stories that should feel big and huge and special sometimes just wind up feeling like content because something's just got to get out the door, and it's kind of driving me nuts these days. So I definitely hear you on the audiences are savvy, and you need to bring something to it.
Yeah, I was just going to add, so on that multi-perspective element, I think there's so much interesting stuff there that we almost didn't. It was a little bit by accident that we kind of came across it. We created a prototype in 2020 of this, which was a 3.5 minutes single scene experience, but had multiple perspectives and cameras in it, and that sort of showed us something that was really interesting. And I mentioned it a few times before, but it goes to what I think immersive theatre can create for us, which is a really interesting blend of audience agency mixed with linear narrative. And that's a kind of an area which I feel starts to scratch at and explore, which is really important as well, is how can we have, linear narrative, which essentially can have this crafted cathartic journey, but allow audiences to have their own sort of flavor of that and their own sense of agency and control over how they consume it. And if you look at a project like Sleep No More, you control where you want to view that from, and you feel empowered by that, but you're essentially still existing around a linear narrative that will happen around you at that point. And so there's something really interesting in this mix here that we want to explore further. And it's created a lot of questions for people that come out of the experience. They don't know necessarily what's happened, and some people actually get quite anxious because they want to flip between all of the scenes, all the viewpoints simultaneously. So I think that sort of agitation of the form will help us as we work out where narrative is going to sit in this immersive space.
Well, and that idea of audience agency within a linear narrative, you hit the nail on the head by mentioning that's what's happening in Sleep No More. You don't have any narrative agency in that show, but because of where you choose to go, you get a particular experience of the story. And we've corresponded on this in interview form before. And Ryan, you mentioned that there's a quote you have here: "In traditional storytelling, in my culture, stories are not given; they are earned." And that's some of what's going on here too, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a very conscious decision. It is something, again, that I want to sort of enforce in all the stories that I tell. I kind of feel like we shouldn't be making content that is kind of, put on the TV or put on somewhere and then walk around and do your chores around the house while for me, like, I like shows that make me work, or stories that make me work. That I have to sit there and listen to every little bit of it and make sure that I haven't, I've got, it's almost like a puzzle. I've got to put it together. I've got to pay attention to every little bit of it, the performances, the way the story is structured, and I want to make sure that we put that forward in Lustration as well. That especially with the idea of this not being linear, and that you forcing the audience to kind of explore a little bit and piece together the story, it makes them work, and it is. It's the information that you glean from several viewings or flicking between each camera. In a way, it's kind of like a reward for digging deeper and wanting to understand more about the story.
You mentioned performances for a second, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that your voice cast includes Kevin Conroy, who is, the voice of Batman, and Dante Basco from Avatar: The Last Airbender, amongst other things. Some of us remember Hook. How'd you get this cast? That's a really incredible cast to pull for, something that's happening in VR. Yeah, maybe Nathan, you could tell us.
Well,
that.
I think it's sort of a two-part process. It's Dare to Dream, which Ryan had. He sort of put out some names of people that he'd love to work with, and it's just so it's putting it out there and saying what if, and then having an amazing production team. And there's one of our producers, Carolina Sorensen, is amazing at this. She can just work out how to get to people and position something in a way that they're interested in and talk to them about it. And I think the good thing about this space is there is some interest from articulate artists who are kind of wanting to know more, and Kevin and Dante and everyone on the team is kind of they're not doing this for money, because it's not about money at this stage in the game, as we all know, but it's about exploring the art. And I think that sort of maybe sums it up. Dare to dream and have a good producer, and you'd be surprised what can happen sometimes.
Now, am I wrong in saying that this is the first one of these that you guys have put together, like this animated 360 spatialized storytelling piece?
We had the prototype that we
Right.
made, which is but this is the first the first iteration, certainly of Lustration, but and also in animated I guess immersive media. New Canvas has created projects, a lot of different projects, more so historically in live action, so less in animation. But this is it's the first iteration of this that we've worked on, and but hopefully not the last.
Now that you've got multiple episodes under your belts, what do you feel like you've learned about spatialized storytelling component of this, because it's such a different medium. Like bringing the animation into spatialized storytelling, having audience members inside the box and not just watching from a distance. It's unlike any other medium. What do you feel like you know now that you didn't when you kicked off?
Look, I think the probably the biggest thing that I learned is like I first wanted the idea of like really making the audience work, but I also feel like there needs to be a level of hand holding to an extent to make sure that the story is a little clear for them and the path is there. So I'd probably look at making sure there's more audio cues, or that what we can achieve with camera position and stuff would be a little bit stronger. We did have some restrictions with the software and what we were capable of doing within that to tell a story. So I think overall for me it's having enough to guide the audience, but not to really put them on rails and force them through the story.
Mm.
It's really finding that fine line between the two, I think, is the biggest takeaway for me.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that, so yeah, Ryan touched on it, that restrictions of the software. So we used a program called Quill, which is actually an amazing tool for, essentially no code deployment of 6DoF VR. So, if you're an artist out there and you want to create an environment, it's great for that. And we were able to iterate and see lots of really cool things. I think we now know going forward that we might, if we want to advance some of the functionality and just some of the workflow animation components, we'll need to move into a game engine for this production. But one of the things I've kind of known this for a while, but I think it's just been reinforced through watching people experience Lustration the first 4 eps, is that the social component of this is really important. And if you think about, if we're learning a lot about how live theatre or immersive theatre or these kind of immersive experiences can adapt, we've got to remember that some of the value in that is really about the socialization. So, if going back to Sleep No More, it's meeting in the bar before you go into the hotel, and vice versa, and going back and chatting with friends and seeing your friends. You might not be talking to them too much while you're in the experience, but you'll be sharing it together, and then you'll be unpacking it together. And so we want to include that in future seasons, and we're looking at this now of a social foyer where you can gather, that's themed, and allows you to kind of meet with people and then go and watch the experience together, or experience it, together, and then come back and discuss it as well. So that for me, it's reinforced the value of socialization as we explore what these narrative formats will mean in immersive media, and I think that's really important going forward. So I want to make sure we can infuse that in whatever way we can in the future seasons.
Yeah, I mean that'd be really interesting, particularly with the multi-track nature of what you've got, right? I mean, one of the great joys in immersive is going with a group of friends, getting split up, coming back together, and breaking the story down for each other, right? Like, and there are people who will go back and just like rewatch something, and there are people who've been to Sleep No More bazillion times, and there were people here in LA at the beginning of our little immersive renaissance who I'd run into was like, I've seen this show 8 times, so I got the whole versions of it. And I'm like, wow. Because like for me, the fun was like sitting around with people afterwards and being like, well, what happened over here? Oh, that did. And then that was also part of the experience, and that you're thinking about building that in is, well, I think that's a great idea.
Thanks. Yeah, it sort of came out of watching people actually do it. So coming out of the experience and talking to each other and going, that's who that person was, right? I didn't see that bit, and so yeah, it's it actually it reinforces and motivates social discussion, I think, because it's not the same for everyone. It's slightly different, which is kind of interesting.
Ryan, how does that kind of mechanic make you think about approaching the telling of the story and the exploring of the world?
Look, I still think you hold it close to where we're at the moment. For me, it just enhances that level of like, for me, that was, originally when we first brought this together and thought in the VR space, that was kind of where we wanted to take it from the start. It's just about, learning the rules in VR as we go till we get to that point. So it's something that's always been in our mind to find a way to achieve that, because for me it is about having the ability to kind of talk with everyone. I feel like the way that the binging of media these days kind of takes away a lot of that experience now. Like, you don't kind of have that, the episode's going to drop on this day and then you chat to your friends before the next episode drops. A lot of people kind of brush through an episode and then you got to wait to see who's up at what point to, it takes away a lot of that social interaction, but talking through apps or talking through story points and all that. So if we can find a way to do that, it just allows us to really structure the story to really push through talking points among the audience to really discuss post the episodes.
I know you've got your whole day ahead of you. I'm in LA and you guys are in Australia, so we're talking other side, opposite sides of the morning, as it were. So I just want a quick wrap up here. Just looking ahead, Nathan, this is one of New Canvas's projects. Are there other things on the horizon from the company we should be keeping an eye out for? And also, I guess I should ask you guys, when might we see some more illustration coming down the pike?
Yeah, so hopefully it's not too far away. From an illustration perspective, we're talking about, and we've sort of planned out season 2 at the moment, which, as I mentioned, will have some different functionality, social integration we want to include. But we're also looking at, and Ryan's looking at, other platforms as well. So obviously, hopefully more comics, but looking at even things like how the animation workflow could have a dual output for VR and potentially linear animation as well, and even things like podcasts too. So there's so much to unpack in this world, and Ryan has built an amazing kind of depth to it that we think needs it really needs to kind of live in multiple platforms too. So we don't have any firm dates yet on when that and those different flavors and platforms will kind of come out, but hopefully we'll have that soon. And if everyone's interested, just follow us on socials or sign up on the Lustration site, lustration.co, and we'll keep you posted. In regards to other projects, we've got a few different projects in development. I think as evidenced by Lustration, we're really interested in this kind of storytelling or narrative in immersive, where it exists on the fringes of what's currently being made available. Though there's not a lot of advanced and sophisticated story in immersive media. So Lustration kind of does that. I think, we've got other projects. One's a live action or CG opera project. There's a bunch of other different ones as well that are not thematically connected, but are around the uniform idea of how do we expand the audience, how do we bring new people in, and how do we start to I think more accurately represent our demographic. There's not enough interesting stories for people outside of kind of a younger male kind of demo at the moment. So we need to kind of embrace different voices and different ways of creating content here, and immersive media, which will expand the market, which is something we're all very interested in as well. Lots to work on, but it's about choosing the right projects and giving them the love they deserve to make sure that they get to where they need to as well.
Well, I'm definitely excited to see what you guys do, because you're making interesting worlds and you're doing it in interesting ways. So, and that's kind of all I can ask for from the world. So thank you both.
Thanks.
Lustration is in the MetaQuest store right now. You can check it out. I think it's on the Oculus TV app. And keep an eye on New Canvas. And when there's more from them, I'm sure you'll hear about it from us. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
every year it seems that Midsummer comes earlier each year. Not the Midsummer in the Shakespearean sense of like, that day that marks the beginning of summer, but I mean Midsummer Scream, which marks the beginning of spooky season here in Southern California. And indeed, as Southern California spooks, so spooks the nation. Joining us today to talk about this year's edition of Midsummer Scream, which is coming up on July 29th through the 31st, is David Markland, who runs this whole haunted cavalcade. Hey, David.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. How was that for an intro? I just improvised out of nowhere.
Great. It was
Good.
awesome.
Glad you liked it. Hey man, so like you're back in Long Beach and it's you guys were up and wait. Now I know you did stuff in Pasadena last year. Did you guys do Midsummer last year? I can't even track what the hell's going on anymore. Like, no, you didn't.
It's confusing because obviously everybody has COVID brain. They kind of forget time.
I forgot we did 2 minutes ago. So,
but no, I mean we haven't had an event, big event since 2019. Nothing could really happen in 2020. We did like an online telethon type thing. Please excuse the guy who decided to start mowing his lawn right outside.
Oh, don't worry. If it's not going to be on your end, it's going to be on mine. So
okay. So yeah, we did the telethon in 2020, and then in 2021, we didn't think we could do anything, and we were just planning for doing our Christmas event when things started to open up, and so we scurried and we put together an event called Awaken the Spirits, which was there like because there was going to be a Halloween season in LA. We felt like it would be good to really promote that, which is what the event's really all about. So we didn't call it Midsummer Scream. We called it Midsummer Scream Presents Awaken the Spirits, and that was in August of last year at the Pasadena Convention Center. So it's a lot to wrap around, but basically the way we look at it, we've been preparing for this year's Midsummer Scream for like 3 years now.
And so you're going to have, for those who don't know, and we just jump in media race as we often do here, what's the full breadth of Midsummer Scream? Because people could say like, oh, it's a Halloween convention, but it's a robust one. So what are they going to find when they head on down to Long Beach?
Yeah, I mean it's massive. It's hard to like give an elevator pitch on it. It's 3 days of
give like a freight elevator pitch on it.
The freight elevator package is 350 spooky vendors selling for everything from like apparel and collectibles for people who love horror, but also like masks and props and things for people who like to make haunted houses. We try to be, we really like to inspire people to really up their Halloween game. And then we have people who just like to live that sort of lifestyle year round, whether it's wearing black shirts, showing off their favorite horror characters, or they love to just do spooky stuff, ghost hunting year round. So that's our show floor. And then we have one of our big features is the Hall of Shadows, which is massive. Basically, it's a convention into itself where we're going to have over 15 haunted houses set up for the weekend that are brought to us largely by home haunters from the SoCal area, which are the best home haunters in the world. And so these are walkthrough experiences. Some are just really elaborate displays. They have, we have scare actors in them. All of it brought to you by these local home haunters. And then for
those who haven't been, like I gotta say, like the Hall of Shadows is in and of itself amazing because there's this big space and it's dark and it feels like you are wandering around a neighborhood where just every home is just is just the maze out front, but it's truly a feat and just one of the more spectacular things I've ever seen in a convention. Period. It's all experience. And all I mean, the vendors are great over like right next door, but like it's really intense. There's a build that goes on for like the entire week ahead, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have Rick West, who's one of the founders and co-producer on the event. He spends the previous year going to as many home haunts as he can and trying to recruit people to come out, twists a lot of arms, and keeps in touch with them to come in to make sure they can bring something to us for Midsummer Scream. And this year, our theme this year, even though we're always about Halloween, we're really trying to just go back to the basics and try to recreate our experiences as kids, especially as, a kid of the 70s, remembering trick-or-treating then. We're really trying to harken back to that. And we have a whole neighborhood being set up by CalHaunts, which is a Southern California based collective of haunters, and that they share skills and stuff. And they've divvied it up amongst members to each have a different house. So they're trying to recreate an actual neighborhood within the Hall of Shadows, which is not even the haunts. It's like its own experience unto itself, which is the first thing you'll see. So it's supposed to feel like you are walking into like Burbank, 1975, sort of is one way to approach it. And you'll be able to go trick-or-treating from door to door if you want.
I love it. That's so rad. All right, what else you got on tap?
And then we have big presentations going on. We got a gazillion breakout rooms where we have theater performances happening. But then we have our main stage. We have on Saturday a big presentation that Kirk Hammett, big horror collector, but also really well known for being the lead guitarist for Metallica. I don't know if you've heard of them. Small local band. And
they've done some work over the years. So,
but he'll be there to interview the families of Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney, Boris Karloff, and Vincent Price, who the people who sort of lead the brands and keep the histories of those families alive. Those people will be with him up on stage as a big presentation. And on Sunday we have a composers panel with people who have composed, like Harry Manfredini, who did Friday the 13th, John Massari, who did the Killer Clowns from Outer Space, score, Christopher Young. It's just this crazy all-star lineup of some of the best composers in film history, who, especially if they have horror credits. That's Sunday. And again, like at the same time as any one of these panels, we're having probably like 2 or 3 other panels or presentations going on, which we like to think we really want people to be challenged by choosing what they want to do at any given hour. Are they going to shop? Are they going to hit up the Hall of Shadows? Are they going to see one of several different, we think really phenomenal panels or presentations, each to me, the price of admission alone. And then on top of that, we've got a Black Cat Lounge, which is where we have kittens running amok in a room for people to go and cuddle and hopefully adopt some with one of our partners, Kitten Rescue. And then we also, this year, we've added a museum of Halloween, which is being curated. It's I don't want to spoil it, but basically we really want to show off different collections people have of Halloween memorabilia or collectibles or just things that, you'd want to probably have at your own home, hanging on your wall or on a shelf or just to play with, which is going to be, it's gearing up to be really something really cool and experience unto itself.
How much have you been looking forward to getting back to doing the full deal? Because I could tell, because you did all that. There's some trick or treat stuff you did, last year. You're someone who constantly, is producing events, but this is your big baby. It is the biggest of your babies. I should say, not like big baby, although a giant baby would be terrifying as well.
Sometimes can be.
But how's it feel to have it all coming back?
I mean, this is kind of where it all began. And like I said, we have been planning this for 3 years. So we're looking forward to showing off some of the ideas for like some of these panels and presentations that we've been plotting, just to get them seen. And at the same time, between now and 2020, when everything shut down, I think anything we thought was lackluster, we ditched. And not that we ever have anything lackluster, but you know what I mean? Like things were like, oh, this will be fine for the show. Like we've really upped our game. So we're just super excited to do it and to have it out there. And then as a creative, also we're like, we want to have it done because we've got ideas for 2023 already and 2024. Like, because we can't do everything we want in a single year. We have different ideas for panels and themes that we're eager to start moving forward on. We, as a team, we love doing this. So, we were looking forward to doing it in 2020, and now it's extra pent up to get it out there. And, we love it all.
Now, it's impossible to stop Southern California from doing Halloween, which is a lovely trait we have. as you look ahead, because Midsummer is always the kickoff of the spooky season, what do you think people should be keeping an eye on in terms of, the events? What are some of the things that you're curious about, and what should maybe the immersive crowd definitely be focusing on, or getting ready for when tickets go on sale?
That's in general for the season.
Yeah, just in general for the season.
In general,
Almost like, what are you like excited about? I mean, that might out you, but
Well, no, what's
your
tricky
playing
is
favorites.
this is really tricky this year because there's this. I think the demand for haunted houses is at an all-time high, and for some reason this year I feel like we have a lot less than we've had in past years, especially pre-pandemic. And I don't. It's expensive to start a haunt or a horror themed immersive. So I think people are still coming back cautiously, which I think is unfortunate because now's the time you're going to be having things that people are just going to go to and take a risk on. We have like great stuff coming back. Halloween Horror Nights, we're big fans of. And then, of course, Not Scary Farm is just like getting cooler and cooler each year.
Yeah, last year there was some really great stuff last year.
But in terms of new stuff, there's a lot of stuff not happening, which is a bummer. There's a Dark Harbor due to the ship being down isn't there. But the good news is Shacktoberfest is coming, which I'm pretty excited about. It's the team that does LA Haunted Hayride. They're also returning, but Shacktoberfest is going to be more of a festival Halloween, and I'm always excited to see people take on different approaches to Halloween events, and this sounds like it's going to be a good mix of fresh ideas, a festival, and with some scares. But that will be interesting and something to look out for. And I think one thing you can always look forward to at SoCal in the Halloween season, and as it seems to be getting bigger, are the home haunts. And it's hard to call them out right now because you don't know exactly who's coming back, but the Hall of Shadows is a good place to see about 15 versions of them, but there's dozens and dozens across from San Diego all the way up to Santa Barbara and out east, and those are free. You just have to find them, and we try to provide some resources for people to find them throughout the year as well. But it's just the talent that we have here in SoCal and the energy for Halloween really makes up for the fact that we don't have foliage, or actual growing pumpkin patches. But but every year that gets better and better here.
The art, not the foliage and the pumpkin patches. So the climate isn't shifting in a way.
Exactly. And then in terms of immersives, I'm always like, if anybody knows of anything that's a horror immersive, please let me know. Delusion's coming back. And I don't know if that's a secret, but I think people assume it's coming back. I'm pretty sure it's coming back. And that's just
they've listed a casting, so like it's known at this point.
Okay, good,
so,
good.
You didn't break an NDA there or anything like that.
So. But like that's one of the best things, one of the best immersives ever, one of the best haunted houses ever. So that's always good to have here as well. But that said, we need a lot more stuff because people are going to be crowding all of those. And so I just encourage anybody who's listening, if they have an inkling to ever do a haunt or horror experience, go for it, do it.
Well, and heading down to Midsummer is going to be a great way to get some inspiration and maybe even find ways to do it. So, we're sort of thrown back into a rebuilding period because of the pandemic and the economy and all the other stuff. But as like people are hungry, people want to do this stuff, and I always appreciate that. Not just in Midsummer, but in everything you do all year round. If for instance, someone, heads over to Burbank and goes around the home haunts there, you'll find the flyer you put out. Like I was going around Burbank last year, just walking around during the day in like the horror, adjacent neighborhoods off Magnolia, and finding, in neat little boxes attached to the home haunts, the circular you put out that lists all of the other home
the
haunts.
SoCal haunt list.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I pay for printing on that. All the work goes to Derek Young, who does all the work and legwork on it. And, it's such a cool resource. And again, it just shows you like the passion for the community that this guy just loves to show it off as well. and it's a great opportunity for me to put the Midsummer Screen branding somewhere. But it definitely kind of is exactly what it's what a community is. So
Yeah.
we're really proud to get that out there.
No, it's always great to see. Well, David, coming up on July 29th, going through the 31st, the tickets start at just $32 for Friday, and then all the way up to a pass that's just $63 for the weekend at the most basic pass. So it's definitely a steal for folks if Halloween's their thing, and if you're here in Southern California, it definitely is. And odds are, if someone's in Southern California in Halloween and listens to the show, like they're already headed. But for like the 5 of you who haven't gone, this is a good year to check it out. So
come on out, help us kick off Halloween.
The Games for Change Festival is coming up this July 13th through 16th, with the 13th and 14th live in New York City. And the 15th and 16th is going to be streaming online. To learn more about this year's Game for Change Festival and what Games for Change is, we have Games for Change President Susanna Pollack. Susanna, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Odds are, No Pro listeners remember hearing a bit about Games for Change when we talked about On the Morning You Wake to the End of the World, which debuted at Sundance this year and which y'all were involved in. But let's do the full context here. Games for Change has been around for a while. What is it?
Yeah, well, thank you for having a chance to talk about our work. So you're right, we have been around for a long time, for nearly 20 years. Next year, 2023, will mark our 20th anniversary of our not-for-profit. So that's something to kind of bring up at the top. So we are a non-for-profit, and we've been working to support a global community of creators and innovators who are using not only immersive media projects, but we actually started off with games, hence our name, Games for Change. But those projects that can help people learn, improve our communities, make the world a better place, and generally for social impact. And we work with technology and gaming companies. We work with other NGOs, foundations, a lot of government agencies, and we run a range of programs and events throughout the year. Things like public arcades. We have design challenges. We work a lot with youth. We executive produce projects like Morning You Wake. But we also have what is really our flagship event, which is the Games to Change Festival, which takes place each summer. And this year will mark our return to something in person. It'll actually be hybrid. But we're very excited to bring it back to New York City.
Where do you find yourself in terms of the state of social impact work in games and immersive media as you're headed into the festival?
Well, it's been a really interesting couple of years from the perspective of games, I'll say, in immersive media. I mean, we all could admit, there's a lot that's gone on, a lot has changed in the last few years. But as it relates to interactive technology, there's just been a growing conversation and a shift in perspective and how our culture looks at gaming and what has traditionally been a young person's form of entertainment that parents struggle with because their kids are distracted, and politicians have questioned whether it can drive, playing violent video games can lead to real world violence. And it's turned into this other conversation about how gaming has been our social platform and lifeline for people all over the world when we were all found ourselves in these, situations of self-isolation because of the pandemic. And at the same time, we've seen games being used in the classroom because teachers are trying to find ways to engage with their other disengaged students. And we've seen on the immersive media side and the technology side, VR and digital technologies have become solutions to health inequity as, mental health issues around the world has grown, and doctors are in lower supply for what the demand is, and that virtual practicing is becoming more and more commonplace. So as a not-for-profit that's been advocating for this work for the last 20 years, we find ourselves in a place where people are more open to it, open to this conversation more than ever. And to have an event, coming up in just a few weeks, we are, really excited about helping grow the community even more and helping bring more of these stories to light so more people get involved and funding comes through and people can be helped using these technologies.
Now, before I get fully wonky and throw some philosophical stuff your way, what's on tap for this year's festival?
Okay, well, we are excited, to be able to leverage this hybrid model. So for the last couple of years, when we were forced to be fully virtual, virtual meaning online, not in a headset, we found ourselves in an unexpected situation of seeing how truly global our community was. When we ran the event 2 years ago, we had nearly, I think it was over 7,000 participants from over 110 countries.
How did that compare to like your last time being in person?
Well, our in-person event has grown. We thought it's grown to be about 1,000 people. That's like a lot of people for us. But how many people from around the world can make it to New York from, an economic standpoint or a physical standpoint? So this, was 7 times the size of our event and made it, as I said, really feel like a global community. And we didn't want to disrupt that. We really felt like this is a moment where, again, this forced situation that we all found ourselves in has provided some silver linings. So we decided this year to continue with having a virtual presence. We don't want to cut off the rest of our community who can't come to New York for whatever reasons. So we will continue with that kind of content, which I'm thrilled about. So that'll be the latter 2 days of the last 2 days of the festival. But going back to what's going to happen in person, we are starting the event off with our annual XR Brain Jam, which we did do virtually for the last couple of years, but it was designed to be an in-person experience where we bring together XR creators with domain experts, scientists, researchers, academics that are bringing a field, like their areas of specialty, into a collaborative work environment so that XR creators can explore how this medium can drive, advance the fields of practice for these researchers and scientists. So we've been doing this for the past 5 years in partnership with Carnegie Mellon's Entertainment Technology Center. And it's a 2.5-day collaboration with people who mostly haven't worked together before. Sometimes people join us in teams on the technology side, but they are certainly meeting their scientist or researcher that we pair them with. And they'll work together collaboratively for 3 days. And then at the end, this isn't really a competition. It's really more about developing community, which is very much at the ethos of what Games for Change is about. We'll do a share out of all this work. We give everyone an opportunity to showcase their work at the Games for Change Festival, which will start a couple days later. And it's really exciting. We've seen, prototypes come out of this that have received grants from the National Institute of Health. We've seen startups get launched. So that we're so excited to be able to start the festival that way again. And then we move into some workshop opportunities for participants who are coming in town a little early. And then on the 13th and the 14th, we start off with 2 days of programming, which will include, wonderful keynotes and fireside chats, some panels, as well as a lot of interactive opportunities to engage with the community. One of the things we really are trying to cultivate, I think, at this in-person event is this sense of reconnecting with the community and forging partnerships and discovering different creators and projects. So we have a lot of networking opportunities that we've programmed in. We call it meet and play sessions, where people just have a chance to meet each other and talk to each other, right? Like it's been so long. So we have that going on, and we have our immersive arcade, where we have been curated with our amazing curator, Jesse Damiani, who works with us every year, to showcase a lot of great XR experiences that have, been released in this past year that we think are really relevant to our our community. And the last thing I'm going to say is our awards ceremony and showcase. So each year we have an awards program that highlights exemplary games and XR experiences in the sector. And it might be things that are focusing on health or learning or civics or, big global issues. But it's a way that we can celebrate those creators who are applying their skills to, make this world a bit better.
Before we get started, there was also some talk about how On the Morning You Wake to the End of the World is going to get incorporated into this year's festival. So maybe you could let us know how that's coming together.
Yeah, we're really excited to present it this year because it's kind of like a coming full circle moment for us. We've been working on this project for a long time. I mean, it was started in end of 2017, I think, when Princeton University's program for science and global security came to us and said, hey, we really think that it's time to make some kind of interactive experience that helps raise awareness around global threat, and that it's not a topic that people are really talking about these days, and it needs to be. And it took us, a while to, we found Archer's Mark and Atlas V, who had worked together previously on Notes on Blindness. And we put together this great creative team and brought in other experts. But it was at the 2019 festival that we showed a pilot that we produced with our first grant that we'd gotten from the MacArthur Foundation. And it really was from there that we were able to bring in the rest of the funding to make the piece that was released this year, which is the full 3-chapter On the Morning You Wake. And so for us to be able to present the piece in its entirety as part of our immersive arcade is a great full circle moment. And we're going to have another panel at the festival, whereas the first panel that we had 3 years ago was really focusing on the creative inspiration and what we were intending to make. This conversation is really, it was less about the creative process, but more about what we are doing with the piece. Now that it's been made, now that it's being released in, the festival circuit and it's winning awards, what is the impact that we actually can have with this piece? And the fact that we have a social impact campaign team led by Michaela Chernasky-Holland, which is bringing this piece around the world to different venues and different contexts to help raise the conversation around nuclear threat. And so the panel at the festival will really be about that, about what are the best practices and what can you do with immersive media to actually have the impact that you intend it to have as a creative team. And I think that's a whole skill set and a whole kind of industry in itself that we're really excited about helping build.
Well, and I'm curious as to how, when it comes to the NGOs and nonprofit organizations, fairly familiar. I think a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but people who are in that world are fairly familiar with how, efforts to outcomes are tracked and the different metrics that people use to sort of figure out whether or not, impact is happening. But the world as it is so, kind of increasingly, for a long time it has been sort of corporate dominated, like that's where the real money is. Are you finding that, particularly in sort of the culturally fraught moment we find ourselves in, are the funds coming through to fund these types of initiatives, and what are the people on the other side of that funding looking for as their accounting measures?
Yeah.
Like how are they measuring impact on something like this?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and one that we are, actively in the middle of hopefully solving, or as I said, providing some kind of roadmap for others. So in the case of On the Morning You Wake, it's interesting to look at where the funding came from on this project. So it started off as a grant from the MacArthur Foundation, but specifically from an area of focus that had to do with nuclear weapons threat. Right. So it was the social impact, entity, right? The NGO, or in this case, a foundation that said, right, we want to use different ways of communicating about this issue, VR or games. At the time, we didn't know what it was going to be. I'm willing to fund this. And then from there, the rest of the funding for the actual piece came from more on the media side. So it came from public media entities like Arte France, the public broadcaster, and the British Film Institute, and Meta, honestly, and Meta VR for Good. And so now we've got a great piece that's funded. What can we do with this piece to get it out into the world and have the impact? We actually now are turning back to the NGOs and the foundations that are interested in this issue. And that, I think, is critical, is that there has to be buy-in from these organizations that innovation is a good thing, and finding new ways of storytelling or finding new ways of having impact beyond traditional means is worth the investment. And therefore, we have to then demonstrate that it was, in fact, worth the investment. So we have like 3 or 4 different funders in the nuclear weapons threat kind of space, from Carnegie Corporation to an organization called the Plowshares Fund, one called N Square, and in fact, Meta is coming back in to help support. And what they are interested in, generally, in the nuclear side, is for us to bring this piece around to different audience groups and measure the kind of impact that this is having in different contexts. And that's also something that I think is worth identifying when you think about outcomes. Mm-hmm. So, one outcome that we want to achieve, let's say with young people and students, and we have curriculum that we've created around the experience so that teachers and educators in museum settings can actually have a whole lesson plan around this. So we have this measurable opportunity to see what kids learn through the VR experience, what they learn, with the curricular material that we've designed around it, right? And is VR actually an effective tool to actually transfer knowledge and influence intent, right? Or to take action. And that's very different than when this piece is being experienced with the general public in a museum context or a festival context. We have some very light kind of impact activations that we have before and after people take to watch the experience, and you have less of an opportunity really to measure the outcome that we can measure through a very light survey, what their feeling is pre and post the experience. But that tends to be then about reach, like how many people are actually able to see this in that setting. And then the third as a stakeholder group that we're presenting this piece to are the policymakers and the activists, and having people who are already content matter experts go through this experience and see how they feel having going through it, and how they can use this piece in their work independent of us presenting it. Because that for us would be like the ultimate goal, is to provide access to this material to a grassroots organizations that's trying to raise awareness around nuclear threat, and have them use it in pop-up events, or use it at the UN, or go to Capitol Hill and use it. So we have, a way to survey their feeling about the piece, their intent to use it, how they think it's going to be useful. And so all of those different stakeholder groups are really important to look at the composite of the kind of impact that we can have. But we're just beginning, to be honest with you. I mean, we just finished a 3-week engagement at the Nobel Peace Center at the end of May through June. My team is at the Nuclear Ban Week, which is happening in Vienna this week. Also present at the first meeting of the state parties for the treaty to ban nuclear weapons. And then it moves on to like a New Zealand Dock Edge Film Festival, and going on. And then Hawaii to meet with the contributors who participated in the piece. So we've got all these just great different groups that are going to experience it and be able to, we can capture all that feedback.
So this last year, we saw the term metaverse come back into vogue. And between that and the NFT crypto surge, NFT NYC's on while we're talking, I get this sense that the tech industry is trying to get another boom going. And I wonder, in your experience, is this an opportunity or a challenge for social impact initiatives to make headway and get attention?
Well, I see almost everything as an opportunity, and that just could be me, as just being the eternal optimist, and always trying to put partnerships together to create something special. So while it's a bit unclear, I think, on how one can ensure or find opportunities for the metaverse as a form of public good. I do think there are different stakeholders and interested parties that want to ensure that the metaverse is going to operate in a way that has equity and that has a positive intent through it and is structured in a way that benefits society as a whole, as opposed to being a feeding ground for only capitalism and let's say the dark side. But but I do think that what we are already seeing, certainly through games and the games ecosystem and platforms that already exist, that are early versions of the metaverse, whether it's Roblox or Fortnite or Minecraft, communities being developed, positive use cases happening within those environments, to VR, right? And social VR. I mean, we're seeing already it's starting to happen. And we are looking to explore that at the Games for Change Festival. I don't feel ready to make a statement about how I feel about it yet. I feel like I'm watching and learning, and I want to provide through our event a platform for discussion. And I think that's okay as a not-for-profit, like for us to be that platform. And so we actually have so many great people contributing to the event, talking about how the metaverse can be a tool for cultural and environmental conservation, right? How there can be how metaverse-driven storytelling formats can be developed, and that can deepen cultural heritage efforts. We've got this great speaker named Aaron Huey, who is a National Geographic photographer, who was one of our keynotes on the virtual platform. And he's been taking assignments in the metaverse ever since he utilized photogrammetry to capture ancestral Pueblo structures. And it's deep work, right? And it's creative work and hopefully inspiring to many. So we have a lot of speakers that are touching on case studies, that using their work as a case study, as well as kind of more trend setting, future looking discussions, which we're having as well.
So the thing that I'm always reaching for, and there's outtakes in this interview of me reaching for it, is when it comes to games and metaversal experiences, agency of the participant is sort of baked in, particularly with games, right? If the player doesn't have agency, is it really even a game? Probably no. And I'm wondering if in the NGO world and in the social impact world, if there's a sense that these active participant agency heavy pieces have a greater chance of moving people when the call to action comes than just watching a passive piece of media does, right? Like, is there correlation between action and agency that's seen, or is this something that's still being studied?
Well, I do believe it's still being studied, but that is basically the premise of Games for Change, to be honest with you, is the fact that these interactive forms of media that provide people a sense of agency as they navigate an experience does encourage a different kind of relationship with the content than one that's passively, watching an experience go by, whether it's a linear documentary or a narrative fiction that's about, a topic area. But I also think that virtual reality, whether it's an interactive in the way that a game is interactive, or it's still more of a 360 video, I think that the perspective taking that happens within a VR experience, which you also happen in a game as well, is something that can happen without significant interactivity, and I think those affordances equally provide an enhanced experience that makes a connection to the person who's going through it, because basically both of those scenarios, whether you have agency to make choices in the game or you're looking at something through someone else's eyes, right, in a VR context, and you're taking the perspective of somebody else, those are experiences that are not like the traditional linear forms of media, where you are watching a third person's experience unfold in front of you. And I think those are the two extremely powerful things about both these mediums.
I couldn't agree more, and that is very, very exciting to hear. Susanna, the festival is coming up the 13th through the 16th, with the first 2 days in New York City live, and then the second 2 days happening online. There'll be links in the show notes for those who want to check it out, and I hope this is not the last time I get a chance to talk to you.
Oh, same here. Thanks so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Once again, I want to thank Ryan and Nathan and David and Susanna for being our guests on the show this week. Check the show notes to check out their work. Also check the show notes for the links to this week's office hours and to The Dig. Really looking forward to seeing you in November. We've got a lot planned for the next few weeks. Next week's episode is a special focusing on The Nest. That is Los Angeles' soon-to-be legendary Thea Award-winning experience, which is wrapping its run. We have Jarrett Lance, Jeff Leinenweber, and the voice of Josie in The Nest, Mackenzie Fergens, all on the show next week. Next week's episode's a one-topic show. The episode that comes after that is episode 350. This here is episode 348, so that's going to be episode 350. It's going to be a TeamSpeak episode. We're going to get folks together, probably hitting the week after July 4th. Might push it back a week, but I don't think we actually have time to, because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in July. For those of you who are wondering, yes, we're going to get AMAs going back in the Discord soon, starting to line some stuff up. Also have an eye towards bringing the Walkabout mini golf back. That's in addition to more office hours monthly, and looking forward to doing a meetup in Los Angeles, either in July or August. COVID's ripping through everyone I know right now, so kind of think about what can we do outdoors. Much as I would like to get back to let's go hang out in a bar. Literally the most number of people I know have COVID right now. So please be careful, particularly if you're gathering with the community at any point in time, in this period of time. Please be careful and make sure everyone's being careful, because the problem is that nowadays there's one unmasked person amongst a bunch of masked people. Everyone gets it. Oh my goodness. It's evolved. What do you know? I put bright cheeriness in my voice because I am horrified. You'll note this episode is coming out on a Saturday. We suspended publishing operations yesterday because of the Supreme Court's ruling on Roe versus Wade. This doesn't feel appropriate to deal about business as usual when, more than 50% of the population's right to bodily autonomy is just, waved away by some appointees. Really great functioning democracy we have here. Look, I am going to spare all of you my political rants. If you really want to see them, I have a personal Twitter account. I tend to keep these streams separate because, I'm long-winded. So there you go. Suffice it to say, a lot of people who are very dear to me are and myself are feeling a certain way, and that way is not a good way right now. So I needed to acknowledge that. But that's it. That's all here. If you really want to know, you can see over on my Twitter. I'm at Noah J. Nelson on Twitter, and I'm putting a lot of things on blast and trying to run resources. And yeah, It's all there. It's all there. That's enough. I hope that this episode can be for you what it is for me, which is a moment to step outside of the normal time stream and look at our craft and consider the possibilities of what can be. I'm very grateful that you're spending time with us this weekend. And this is now an hour and 20 minutes long. So I'm going to let you get back to the real world. There you go. The associate producer of No Proscenium is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. This podcast, written, edited, hosted, produced, mixed by me. I'm Noah Nelson. And until next time, I'll see you at the show.